City of Hollister Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, October 25th. Call meeting to order. Verification of agenda posting.
Yes.
Brian.
Good evening. The agenda for the City of Hollister Planning Commission was posted on Friday, October 19th, 2018 at approximately 4:27 p.m.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioner Boyd, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Huboy.
Here.
Commissioner Munzer.
Here.
Chairperson Torres.
Here.
Commissioner Valdivia.
Here.
All right. And so Commission's had a chance to review the minutes for August 23rd, 2018 and September 27th, 2018.
Move to approve both August and September minutes.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
on the floor and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next item is communications from the public on items not listed on the agenda. This is a time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. When the Planning Commission calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and speak to the Commission. Each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes. Please note that state law prohibits the Planning Commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any speaker cards, Brian?
We do have 2 speaker cards. One is for an agenda item, and the other, I am not too sure. It's from Mr. Ward regarding a traffic study. Correct. For which item, sir? Do you have a?
Yes, for the River Parkway International closure.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't read that. Okay, we have just comment cards for items on the agenda, so
Okay.
nothing from the public.
Perfect, thank you.
But that's actually, I don't think that's not in the agenda on the item though. So I think that's yeah. So that would be appropriate for now, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Ward, you can come to the dais, please, and.
Members, thank you. We have made written requests as well as in-person requests to receive a copy or a link to the traffic study and the impact for the River Parkway as well as the Nash closure. We've made this to County Council as well as the project manager, Tenenbaum, I believe his name. We've gotten nothing in return. So I wanted to come in person and make my request formal, make it so we can get that study so we can review it for our homeowners association that's directly behind this parkway and impacted by this, and maybe get by a date that we can get this from you guys. Maybe a phone call or something can kind of push this along a little bit.
Okay.
That's my big request.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We can make that happen, Abraham.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say that if there hasn't been a formal submittal to the city clerk's office. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then that should take care of it on the city's aspect, and I'm glad that you have talked to Mr. Tenenbaum, who's the superintendent. He should be able to respond on the high school's aspect. So it looks like you've contacted the appropriate people.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty. All right, so we'll move on to the public hearings. Item number 1, Commissioner Boyd.
Mr. Chair, yes. I just wanted to let you know that Huboy Architecture has an ongoing business relationship with Hazel Hawkins Hospital, providing architectural services. So therefore, I must recuse myself from item number 1.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll follow the same pattern we did at the last meeting. I'll just go ahead and read the initial heading of the item, and then staff will go ahead and go into the details of the item. So item number 1 is Site and Architectural Review number 2018-16, ASAP Signs. Abraham.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting approval for a 56.67 square foot double-sided freestanding multi-tenant sign at 930 Sunset Drive, which is in the commercial office zoning district. This sign is proposed to be set back 10 feet from the curb. The sign face is proposed to be 85 inches in width and 96 inches in height for an overall area of 56.67 square feet per side. The sign would include a metal frame structural core, and the exterior would have a stucco finish to match the existing buildings on site. The top center of the sign would be arced with a cap of stucco finish. The paneling featuring the property's address, 930 Sunset Drive, will be 10 inches in height and 48 inches in width. The tenant panels will be 8 inches in height and 60 inches in width. The medium density overlay, or the MDO, tenant panels will be 1.5 inches thick and colored Caribbean swim on the background and painted and applied with whipped cream vinyl leathering, as you can see. The core of the sign structure is to be constructed from a molded expanded polyurethane, which will then be covered in a fast curing. Sorry, you guys really don't need to hear all of the details on that, I guess. I'll skip down. The sign is going to be sealed off with a 100% aggregated acrylic finish. This will help make the sign impact resistant. Within the sign's structure, 3-inch and 4-inch steel 40 PVC pipe that is bounded in the center. Basically, going off of this drawing, there's going to be pipes where it's kind of dotted along the lines. Pipe's going to go through that, and when they have the metal structures, they will place those within the dotted lines as you see on your screen, and that's going to be filled with a resin that will hold in those pipes. And from there, the sign will be placed into the 2-foot footings that you'll see, and there'll be concrete placed around the footings. This is an exhibit which shows the sign where it will be placed. Within the triangle is where they're proposing their landscaping, and we have a photo of what they're proposing there. This particular type of landscape ground cover is drought resistant, and as you can see, it has little white flowers. It'll grow very quickly and expands up to about 3 to 6 inches in height, and is really well used for covering areas such as this. There will be a boulder that will be placed off to the side of the sign, and it'll have a 1.5 drip inch irrigation line that runs through it, which is that line that you can see going throughout the triangle. 2 floodlights are going to be placed on either side of the sign. This will comply with the dark skies conditions within our code. They will be powder coated black. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and review the applicant's request, receive all written and oral testimony regarding the proposal, and consider approving site and architectural application number 2018-16, subject to the findings and conditions drafted in the resolution. Are there any questions for staff?
Any questions?
I have a question on the resolution. It says San Benito Health Foundation.
That's correct.
Pardon me?
That is correct.
Oh, so it's for the, I thought it was for the hospital.
On the application and with who we've been speaking with, the names have been used interchangeably. On the actual application that we received, it says the San Benito Community Health Foundation.
Okay.
And then when we're speaking with the applicant, they go by the Hazel Hawkins Memorial Community clinic.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then I had a question. Typically on these type of signs, do we require that the applicant do any type of anti-graffiti coating on these, or is that up to the applicant to do that? Yeah, I just be on the safe side. And then the second question I had, with this type of lighting, the ground lighting, I know in Salinas they require these basic cages because many times these type of lights become like a football for vandals. I mean, they just come and straight out kick them out of their sockets. So I don't know if there's also some kind of mandate for those cages or some others that are in a secured box to prevent, vandals from doing that. If not, I would highly suggest it for the applicant, given, the potential for the foot traffic in that area. So those were my comments. Any additional? Okay, with that, we will open it up to a public comment period here at 6:12. Do we have any speaker cards on this item, Brad?
We do not.
All right. We will close public comment period at 6:12 and bring it back to the commission. What's the pleasure of the commission on this item?
We'll go ahead and make a motion if there isn't any more input from the commissioners.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve application number 2018-16, subject to the finding conditions contained in the draft resolution.
And what's our PC resolution, April?
46. Would you like to add that condition for the graffiti coating?
If we could, I'd like
Yeah.
I would second that motion and add that,
Yes.
that item.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll bring Dave Havoy back in. And then prior to the meeting, I did ask the question, and if the commissioners are willing to entertain, we have two sign items on the agenda, and I was hoping to bring that sign agenda item up and make that item number 2, and then we'll move to the other City of Hollister items as 3 and 4. So if that's okay with the commission, we would take the second sign applicant and bring them up. And then I will have to recuse myself from that one. We do have, Chispa does have a working relationship with De Novo Home, so I will turn that over to, who's our chair? Dave?
It would be Commissioner Munzer.
Commissioner Munzer. So I'll recuse myself from that item.
Okay, next item, site and architectural review for number 2018-15. De Novo Homes, the applicant is requesting site and architectural approval. I'll hand this over for the staff report.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting a site and architectural approval for two 15.10 feet by 3 feet by 8 foot non-illuminated freestanding entry monument signs at the southeast and southwest entrances to the Allendale subdivision along Buena Vista Road. The steel and gabion entry signs will consist of a gabion column, which shall consist of 3 gabion boxes. The bottom box shall contain medium to large cobblestones, and then we'll have each of these is going to be gold and brown within color of the stones that are chosen. The middle box will be 3.6 feet in diameter, and the top box will contain ledge stone. The polycarbonate sign lettering and logos shall be mounted on the corrugated galvanized steel face of the sign. The sign is proposed to be set back 10 feet from the curb of the sidewalk, and the landscaping will be comprised of what's called canyon prints and purple pixie, which you can see on the screen. Just so the audience has an idea of where these signs will be located, you can see right where these little red flowers are. They'll be placed on the corners right here. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and review the applicant's request, receive all oral and written testimony regarding the proposal, and consider approving site and architectural number 2018-15, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. Are there any questions for staff?
Any additional questions for staff from the commissioners?
In addition, we also have Mike Evans of Nova Homes here if you have any questions regarding these entry signs.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll open this up to public hearing at 6:16.
Ms. Kathy Sanchez.
My name is Kathy Sanchez. I live at 410 North Street, and my comments have to do with whether the sign was lighted, and I hear it's non-illuminated. And I also, seeing the size, I wanted a assurance that it wasn't going to be interfering with traffic sight for the drivers, since the street's going to become very busy. And the anti-graffiti, I heard from the commissioners, interested me. I'm wondering if the lettering will get any kind of coating. And it says Allendale on one side, and if it's visible from the other side, I'm wondering if it's also going to say Allendale or something else. And the last comment has to do with that the signs are on corners of the new street or the North Street extension, and I would like to urge you to consider that wherever you put this sign, that it not limit in the future if there's going to be a bus stop, which is logical on a corner to have a bus stop, since it's going to be a very busy street. And I'm living on that part of North Street that's undeveloped, and it's not going to have any parking, so just make a comment for bus stop on the only couple of corners that are part of the new North Street. That's it.
Thank you. Any additional speaker cards?
That's it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and...
Well, Mr. Chair, on those questions, can the applicant respond to the lighting and the anti-graffiti?
Sure can.
Okay.
Good evening. Michael Evans, Nova Homes. I'm the project manager for Allendale. There will be no lighting pointing on the signs at night or anything to that effect. The anti-graffiti, we don't have a problem with spraying that compound on the sign itself. It actually helps us as well, and it'll help maintain integrity of the sign and structure itself. So yeah, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Is the steel work, is it to be primed and painted at all, or?
No, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I got kind of a little example here that we could pass up to you. It's not the exact same thing, but the idea is to have the steel kind of rust a little bit and make a little statement. You can show that.
Like Core 10 steel?
Yeah, correct. So the structure itself is going to be a box column on the left-hand side, and then it'll have kind of a, I guess, a little cover that would cover the structure for the hanging sign itself. So it gives a little bit of a country effect, keeping the idea of Allendale still out in the country. So the column on the left will be the welded structure, and then that'll be the where the steel kind of rusts a little bit. With inside there is where we'll have 3 different layers of rock, just to kind of break it up, give it a little more eye candy or a little bit of differentiation in rock color and size. And then, as you can see, there's 2 other little plackets on there, and that's just basically the names of the neighborhoods up there that we have. We have 2 different neighborhoods on the very east or on the west side of the project, and then a separate neighborhood on the west side, so.
I know there's not a lot of surface area there for graffiti, but I guess,
I think it'd help. Every little bit will
but
help.
if you put a coating on the steel itself, then would that probably would affect the weathering aspect of it?
Well, I think it's going to rust no matter what.
It is? Okay.
It's just the anti-graffiti, yes.
Okay.
I think we'll be fine with
All right.
applying some.
I do have a question for the applicant. Mr. Evans, after the subdivision is finalized and accepted by the city of Hollister, this sign in particular, will this fall under the CFD?
Yes, it's in the CFD, and there's a line item specifically for signage, lighting, and bollards within
Okay.
the CFD.
Okay, because once the subdivision's done, the sign actually becomes our responsibility if it breaks. So I just wanted to make sure the commission understood that once the subdivision's in and done and we accept it, it's our responsibility to fix it if someone runs into it or it breaks. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty sturdy sign, I'll say that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Evans.
Sure. Thank you.
We will go ahead and close the public hearing as of 6:22. Any questions from the commissioners?
I just think that, I think it's pretty creative design. I actually like the way it was put together with the rock. It's a mesh and rock and the steel. I think it's very sustainable design. I think it'll look pretty handsome there.
Okay, what is the consensus of the commission?
Okay, I guess with that I should preface to make a motion for approval for the site and architectural, PC resolution number 47?
Second.
2018 47, and to approve the site and architectural review number 2018-15 for the applicant, Allendale Nova Homes.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great, that concludes that item, and I'll go grab Gabe.
Okay, so let's move on to item now number 3, Title 10 Vehicles and Traffic, Title 15 Building and Construction, Title 16 Subdivisions, and Title 17 Zoning Amendments for the City of Hollister. Abraham?
Thank you. So we have Amber, Cameron, and Danny. Cameron's going to talk a little bit about the vehicle code, and the city engineer will talk and discuss the grading ordinance. I do want to indicate that as part of your packet, you received a memo indicating that there's two separate resolutions, one recommending the vehicle code amendments to the City Council, and the other one recommending the grading ordinance to the City Council. And with that, I'll have Amber.
Thank you. At its regular meeting of February 19, 2012, the City of Hollister City Council adopted Ordinance 1091, an ordinance implementing Section 1010-030 of the Hollister Municipal Code, which prohibits the parking and storage of any recreational vehicles and boats on private property unless parked or stored in a garage or structure that is fully enclosed and is located in the legally permitted rear yard or legally permitted side yard pursuant to Chapter 17 of the Hollister Municipal Code. For the purposes of this section, fully enclosed means that the garage or the structure provides coverage of the recreational vehicle or boat on all four sides so that no part of the recreational vehicle or boat can be seen outside of the garage or structure. At its regular meeting of May 7, 2018, the City Council directed staff to bring an item to the May 21, 2018 City Council meeting pertaining to RV and boat storage and parking on residential zoning districts. On May 21, 2018, at the City Council meeting, Council requested that the report be continued and be brought back to the June 4th, 2018 meeting, when all council would be present. If it was the desire of the council to direct staff to work with the Planning Commission in preparing an amendment to the RV and boat ordinance, the following revisions to the code would be discussed and considered. Pertaining to the parking and storing of recreation vehicles and boats outside of a structure and on a private and paved driveway where space is not available to the rear or side yard, and that the lot is not on a corner and has no reasonable access to either the side yard or rear yard, provided that all the following conditions exist. And just for the record, this is actually an ordinance that was given to us by Ray Friend, former council member Ray Friend, and it is from the city of Gilroy. So those following conditions were that 1, inside storage was not possible. 2, that the vehicle was stored perpendicular to the front curb. No parking of the vehicle extends over the public sidewalk or the thoroughfare, which is also the public right-of-way. 4, no more than 1 recreational vehicle or 1 boat may be stored or parked in the front yard or single-family residential unit. The 5th, the vehicle could be at least 3 feet from the side and rear yard lines. 6, the vehicle cannot block access to or occupy any required parking spaces. In addition, stored recreation vehicles shall not be used as a dwelling unit permanently connected to sewer lines, water lines, or electricity. Temporary electrical connections for charging batteries and the use of electricity or propane fuel would be permitted, but only when necessary to prepare a recreational vehicle for immediate use. And the 3rd, it would not be allowed for storing goods, materials, or other equipment. So with this, staff took direction from City Council to work with the Planning Commission to consider the storage and parking of recreational vehicles and boats outside of a structure, in particular the front yard. And this would also be on a paved driveway when space was not available in the rear or side yard, or the lot was on a corner with no reasonable access to the side yard or the rear yard. In addition, staff had also requested direction from the City Council to define the maximum period of time in which an oversized recreational vehicle or boat would be permitted on any public or private street, public off-street parking lot, or any public property for the loading, unloading, cleaning, routine maintenance and repair, or in conjunction with a permitted construction project. Staff presented this item as a report and asked to receive direction from the Planning Commission on August 23rd, 2018 regarding the changes previously mentioned. Staff brought the item back to the September 27th meeting with Planning Commission and was asked to bring back the item with some of the previous discussions we had considered to be written into a ordinance. Those would be permitting the uncovered storage and parking of recreational vehicles and boats outside of a structure on private property in the legally permitted rear or side yard. And the second would be to change the maximum period of time allowing individuals to park, store, leave, maintain recreational vehicles in their driveway from 14 days a year to 72 hours. With this, staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the request, receive all oral and written testimony regarding the proposed amendments to Ordinance 1091 and consider approving the attached resolution recommended to the City Council, an ordinance to amend the miscellaneous sections of Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic. Are there any questions for staff?
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm a little confused here. You're saying that parking the recreational vehicle on a paved driveway, as long as it meets all these conditions, and it's within it's parallel to the curb, it's 3 feet from the front property line. I'm just going off, maybe not exactly correct here, but is permittable. Then it's saying in the draft of Exhibit A. I guess this is the draft Exhibit A.
Correct.
Okay, it says we're changing it to permit the parking of a recreational vehicle on a paved driveway in front of the house, providing it meets all these conditions. And then on D5, it says that the recreational vehicle or boat may be parked, stored, left, kept, or maintained in the driveway for a total of, and it's crossed out, 14 days or 72 hours. So I thought that that you could park a recreational vehicle in the front driveway, provided it meets all those conditions, and leave it there to perpetuity. What's the 72 hours about? I don't. It seems to me that's like a discrepancy or.
So the.
Does that? I'm sorry to jump in here, but is that probably 72 hours if you're leaving it, if it's oversized and it's have to be parked in the street?
So there's a few. Starting off with Exhibit A. Exhibit A is the actual, we took the original ordinance and then for where you can see on Section A where it's crossed off, our last conversation that we had with the commission was not to consider allowing people to park their recreational vehicles or their boats in the front driveway. So this Exhibit A is the original ordinance that you see. There's the places where we're proposing to amend that would be Section A, and Section A is basically stating that instead of having to have a fully enclosed, meaning all four sides covering a structure covering a recreational vehicle or boat, that it would be permitted in the legally permitted rear or side yard uncovered. And then for D5, where it's talking about the time permitted, right now people are allowed to have a recreational vehicle parked, stored, left, kept, maintained in a driveway for a total of 14 days per year. We are asking that it be changed to 72 hours. So right now, the 72 hours does not have a limit on it. 72 hours was chosen because that's what is being used in our code enforcement. Not only code enforcement, but it's also what is being used by police officers. And it was recommended by them. It's a lot harder for code enforcement to go to someone's property and cite something that's been there for 14 days. People can park there for a day or two and then move it and come back. So they suggested that maybe 72 hours makes it easier for them to enforce.
So you're making it more restrictive then if you're parking the recreational vehicle on a paved driveway on your own property from 14 hours to 72 hours? 14 days to 72? Is that what you're proposing here? Because it started off by saying is that, excuse me, when you started your staff report, that if I thought it was saying that you could leave it on the front of your property, within the property lines, as long as it meets those conditions. But now you're saying you can only leave it there for 72 hours. Is that what you're saying?
I can try to address that, Commissioner Huber. Thank you. To clarify, the ordinance that was provided to you in Exhibit A, it's the actual ordinance that the Hollister Municipal Code currently has for RV, and this is under Title 10. It's not zoning, but we were directed to work on it. They just figured that planning staff would be able to work with Planning Commission, public, City Council to try to address some of the concerns that have been going on over the last years in regards to particularly code enforcement calls for outside storage of RVs and boats. And so the code essentially, after discussions with Planning Commission and after discussions with the City Council, essentially there's two sections of the code that are being contemplated to be amended or modified. One of them, as Amber mentioned, is that currently a property owner can have an RV or a boat stored on their property, but the ordinance basically says that it has to be stored inside a structure, basically a garage or an accessory structure, say like locked in the rear yard, cannot be in the front yard. It would, if the single-family home fits an RV or a boat in the backyard, it could be there, but the code actually says it has to be within an enclosed structure. And so the amendment is basically as being requested for Planning Commission to recommend to City Council is that it stays that way, but with the only exception that it does not have to be enclosed. As long as it's placed in the rear yard or side yard, that it's enclosed properly. It does not have to be enclosed in a structure. And by properly, we also make sure that there has to be proper setbacks, that it's placed in an area that's not going to be visible from any of the streets. So that's one. The second one is the time limit. Currently, it just says that it can be that an RV or boat can be stored in front of the house, such as in the driveway or even on the public right-of-way for a period of 14 days. So in talking in discussing this in previous Planning Commission meetings and City Council, and then talking with the public, code enforcement, 14 days is it's difficult or challenging to enforce. 14 days. The reason why the 72 hours was chosen is because 72 hours is a time that is consistent to where, like, for example, the police department, if it's in the public right away, they can respond.
That's if you're talking about the public right away, but if
Correct.
it's on your own property, because the way that this staff report was prefaced, it says permitting the parking and storing of recreation vehicles and boats outside a structure on a paved driveway when space is not available on a rear yard or side yard, or the lot is not on a corner and has no reasonable access to either side yard or rear yard, providing all these conditions exist.
Right.
So if all those conditions exist, you can park it on the driveway.
So to clarify that, Commissioner Huboy, that was one thing that we brought up to say, would the council be amenable to allow it in the front yard as stated? And so the reason why it's not in the ordinance as an amendment was because that was not supported by the council. It was something that we thought, should we consider the possibility of allowing it in the front yard as long as it meets all the requirements? And the response was no. Really, it should be in an area outside of the front yard, outside of the front driveway. It's mentioned in the staff report because that was something that we discussed with the council to see if that's something.
Okay, so that was what was brought to the council, and they didn't go along with it.
It was actually something that the council said, look, this city of Gilroy has something similar. Let's discuss it. Let's see if this is something that we would want to support and correct, as you mentioned, that's something that they didn't go along with. What we've been hearing is those two amendments, the 14 days, from 14 days to 72 hours, and the allowing it as is on rear yard, side yard, as long as setbacks are met, with the change that it doesn't have to be in an enclosed structure, as long as.
I don't see what difference it makes to allow it on a rear or side yard and not allow it on your front yard if it's on your own private property.
But I think part of the intent, Commissioner Huboy, is we need people to park in their driveway and not the public streets. And so we have a lot of people with their vehicles that are parking in the public streets, and this is one way in which we can accommodate RV users to allow them to pack in or pack out. But to have an RV in someone's driveway for 14 days, that's displacing the residents' cars on the public street, which is causing issues. That's not the main intent, but we need to start using our driveways more. Each household has cars, and so we're running out of space on some of our public streets.
Well, but that's why, it makes sense to allow the parking of an RV, because if it's on your own driveway, not in a public street, I can understand the public street issue, but if it's on your own driveway, and I think we stated this before.
But the residential vehicle, though, our cars and trucks, those need to be parked on private property if possible. And an RV is important. We all love RVs, but really the intent of a home on your driveway is to have your cars parked on your property. Unfortunately, we use garages as living spaces, as storage, and so we're already having enough problems with finding parking for someone on their own property, and so now we're just kind of expanding parking now on the street. And so I think that's not the main intent, but that's just one way to kind of look at the change of this ordinance. So just thought to throw that out there.
All right.
Abraham, I have a question on the ordinance itself. So will this be, if this moves through, and then so there's going to be an enforcement period? I'm assuming that the code enforcement is going to go out. I mean, I can honestly, in my subdivision, I have two neighbors that do exactly what we're talking about, where the RV is displacing two vehicles that are not in the garage, because the garage is completely packed and they're parking in the cul-de-sacs or any place else they can find a parking, because the RV is permanently in the driveway. So will this be something that code enforcement is going to be actively doing then once this is, if it's approved?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. Yes, so next steps would be, as you know, recommend to City Council. City Council can then review it, and if they agree, they can adopt, or if they think that there should be additional changes, they can adopt with additional changes. If there's substantial changes, they can say, take it back to the Planning Commission and review. But if they adopt, then after 30 days, it's actually two because it's an ordinance, there's two readings with the City Council, so 2 meetings with the City Council. And after the second one, if it adopts, 30 days after, it becomes law. So then at that point, then is when the Code Enforcement Department would be able to enforce RV vehicles or boats on the property. If it's in the public right-of-way, it continues to be a police matter. However, it's my understanding that it's mainly because there's just because of the limited staff on code enforcement, they mainly respond to calls that they get. It doesn't necessarily mean that they can't respond to something that they see, but it's mainly on a call basis. But certainly doesn't mean that if they see something they can't approach or send a letter to the property owner if they see a violation.
Yeah, where I'm getting with that is I would hope that they would allow enough time for that property owner to make the appropriate arrangements. Obviously, storage is expensive for those type of RV units, some leeway at least with this new transition, if you will. Second question I had, so this ordinance is specific to recreational vehicles and boats. I'm assuming that we have something in regards to the pods or the con boxes, the shipping containers, in another ordinance somewhere, because I do see that every now and again where they're dropping the containers while they're doing a remodel, and it's off either in the driveway or the little side landscape area, and in some cases that con box is there for months. Is that covered in another section somewhere?
That's correct, Chairman Torres. That I believe is in our either Chapter 17 zoning or Chapter 15 building, but we can check that out and verify. But you're right, that should only be at a certain period of time. I think it is a few months, but it is covered in a different section of the code, but addressing very similar in regards to time limits and placement and so forth.
Thank you.
And you bring up a good point in regards to letting the public know. Maybe it can be recommended that if it does get recommended to City Council, maybe with the recommendation that if there are if there are some, if code enforcement is responding, that maybe they should start with the warning, kind of letting or educating the public of the new zoning, or not zoning code, it's actually vehicle code, letting them know that they have some time to make the adjustment, if that's a desire of the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just wanted to get a clarification of that. I apologize if I'm expressing an opinion before the public hearing is closed. I know we have a public hearing on this item.
Any additional comments for staff on this item before we go to public?
Mr. Chair, if you, it's up to you, it's up to the commission, but if there is two separate resolutions, if you want to either just, if you want to open up the public, if you want to, before you open up the public hearing, if you want to hear the city engineer also speak on the grading ordinance, or if you want to just do it separately, however you prefer.
Let's
just if I might just add one more without going farther and expressing my opinion on this, is that since this, I go through my neighborhood and there's a lot of recreational vehicles parked in front of the house. I would like to see public input, people to realize that this is an impending ordinance, and I'd like to see somehow that they're noticed in some way, either through the media or to get adequate public input before we make a decision on this ordinance. So I would be in favor of postponing a decision on this until we can get a better outreach to the public. I'm sure that very few people know that they're going to be affected by this ordinance. I want them to be here at this public hearing to express their opinions, because it's very ubiquitous to see a lot of these situations throughout, at least throughout my neighborhood, and I'm sure throughout the city of Hollister.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Huboy. This is a duly noted public hearing. It was notified through the newspaper. I know that a few months ago, I think it's been some time, this was brought up again, mainly due, again, because of code enforcement and code enforcement calls that were received and code enforcement notifications to members of the public asking them to, because the current ordinance basically says that they can't store them in the front yard, it has to be in the backyard, and it has to be enclosed. And so you're right, there's a lot of homes that don't have the space. And so if I recall, my recollection serves me right, there was city council public hearings, this must have been at least a year ago, that discussed the potential of amending the Title 10 vehicle ordinance to modify the RV and boat location of parking on the site. I recall that there was a lot of members of the public who owned the RVs, and a lot of the members of the public who called code enforcement to complain were not present. I think that's a dilemma that we see, that the members of the public that call to complain usually remain anonymous. But in any case, this is a duly noted public hearing, and so if the commission does desire to somehow make a different type of outreach, you can certainly recommend that. But this public hearing has met the duly noted public hearing requirements, and for it to be recommended to the city council. But if you desire to change it and recommend something different, you can certainly do so as well.
Because this is a little different from a typical site and architectural review project where people within a certain radius are noticed. This affects the whole city, and I very sincerely doubt it that they know that we're deliberating on this. So I'd like to at least consider different ways of letting the public know that a lot of these people, citizens, are going to be affected by this ordinance, and give them an opportunity to come to the commission meeting here and speak out at a public hearing process. That's what I'd like.
Commissioner Huboy, thank you. The Development Services Department has a really good relationship with our local media. What we could do is we can inform the Bonito Link San Benito Live, the freelance, of the city council hearing when this will, if the commission chooses to send this to the council, of when that meeting will take place. And the one thing with the city council is that they start a little bit later. We might be able to have more people come to that meeting to voice their opinion for or against the changes. With everyone commuting, that meeting might be a better opportunity to get more of the public involved.
Agreed.
To go along with what you're saying, Brian, just to we're making an amendment to the ordinance. We're not enforcing the ordinance. We're just here to make the amendments with these recommendations that we had staff move forward with in a prior meeting. So we are just voting on this. It'll be up to the city council to agree with it.
That's correct. The city council creates policy. Yeah. And so it's really the venue that people should, or the public should come to, is the city council. They voice their opinions to the city council members who will ultimately make the law. And unless staff disagrees with me, but we can take the extra step and make sure that our local media knows of this meeting, so they can properly inform the public through their means of notice. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with that. Okay, so Abraham, back to your initial comment. So we have you wanted to go into the combine the two with the amendment to the chapter 15.24 as well?
Right, it's all part of one item.
Okay.
And so it's up to you. You could open it and close it for this one, and then we'll have the city engineer come up, or have the city engineer just come up and give the...
Yeah, let's just go right through this.
Good evening. At the previous Planning Commission meeting, the engineering staff gave a presentation on amendments to the grading ordinance. We have a few slides. They're the same ones we showed last time, so I'll just go ahead and give you my oral report here. This item's related to an amendment to Chapter 15.24, Grading and Best Management Practice Control of the Hollister Municipal Code. The changes that are being proposed are being made to coordinate and clarify sections in the grading code and also as they relate to the subdivision code and the zoning code related to improvements such as your roads, water, sewer, storm, and stormwater management. Chapter 15.24, Grading and Best Management Practice Control, provides regulatory guidelines for the grading activities and for the design, construction, and installation of improvements on private and public properties within the city of Hollister. Periodically, the code must be updated to comply with state and federal regulations, as well as to provide clarifications to assist staff with development review processing. Staff has prepared a draft ordinance which would provide the necessary update to the city code to be consistent with the state of California stormwater regulations. In addition, the update would assist in assuring internal consistency during the development review process by providing clarification to miscellaneous sections of the grading code. And with that, staff would like to recommend to the Planning Commission to review the request, receive all written and oral testimony regarding the proposal, and approve the resolution recommending to the City Council the adoption of the proposed ordinance with amendments to Chapter 15.24, Grading and Best Management Practice Control.
Okay, questions? Danny, I had one. Obviously, with our, as builder developer, we report regularly to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. What is this? What does the city report to those agencies? Are you do annual report?
We do
or-
annual reporting. Sometimes, depending, we may have to turn in reports with construction related things. But for the annual reporting, it's on the MS4, the city stormwater system.
So everything that the developer and the civil engineers are working on the state water website, ultimately when that's either initial, we get our WDA number, we go through the whole process and then
Yeah.
close out, the city will get access to those.
Yeah, that is under the construction permit.
Right.
The city also has an MS4 permit, which regulates the entire system, which the city has to report on.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Any additional questions? All righty. So we have 2 items. Thank you, Lenny. So we will open these up for, these 2 items as one, and open up for public comment period at 6:55. Brian, any speaker cards on these items?
We have nothing.
All righty. So we'll bring it back at 6:55. What is the pleasure of the commission on these, this item with the 2 items, I should say?
Well, Mr. Chair, in the situation here, we have 2 items. One that I'm not a proponent for, and the other one that I am, the grading and drainage. So I mean, just to summarize my position on the recreational vehicles, if a vehicle is small enough to park on a driveway, I think that should be left there without any code enforcement. To correct that situation, I can understand oversized vehicles parked in a public driveway, a public street, that would take space for vehicle parking in a public street. But when it's small enough to park on your own driveway, I think that it should be entitled as a property owner to be able to do that. Okay. So I'm for the LID, the best management practices on grading and keeping our water clean and all that, but I am not in favor of the ordinance for the recreational vehicles and boats.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Boyd. Abraham, on these items, you want an individual motion per?
Yes, Chairman Torres, it would be one motion for the Title 10 vehicles and traffic, and then another for Title 15 building and construction and Title 16 subdivisions for the grading ordinance amendments.
All right, so let me see if I can get, Commissioner has no additional questions. I'd go ahead and try to formulate a motion here to approve PC Resolution 2018
48.
40?
48.
48. For Title 10 vehicles and traffic as noted.
I'll make the motions to amend. I'll make the motions for PC Resolution 2018-48, which amends the Ordinance 1091 to consider approving the attached resolutions to allow the uncover storage and parking of recreational vehicles and boats outside of structures on private property in illegally permitted rear and side yards, as well as to change the maximum period of the time individuals may park, store, leave, or maintain recreational vehicles or boats in the driveway from 14 days to 72 hours.
Okay. I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Okay. And we have PC Resolution 2018-49.
It's actually only for, Danny just told me, Title 15 building. Title 16 is subdivisions, but this one's only on Title 15 building.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion for that. Title 15 building and construction.
I'll make the motion for the resolution recommended to the City Council to adopt the proposed ordinance with the amendments to Chapter 15-24. 15.24. Thank you.
Okay, second.
And motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, those two items are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, General Plan Amendment 2018-1, City of Hollister. Abraham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you so much. This item is a general plan amendment that has 3 actual different amendments within. As you know, the state of California allows for a maximum of 4 general plan amendments per year. And so in this case, we waited a little bit to have all the general plan amendments that we thought we were going to have in a period of time so as to not have to spend those 4 general plan amendments. So these 3 are encompassed in one. As you know, the City of Hollister doesn't do many amendments to begin with, general plan amendments. But this one, the first one that I'm going to begin with is actually the growth management ordinance that the City of Hollister City Council has been contemplating for some time now. Just a little bit of background. In August of 2017, the City Council asked prior to that to have a special meeting of the City Council to discuss for staff to provide a report on residential growth in the City of Hollister. And so based on that, on the December 11th, the City Council discussed the possibility of a growth management program in the City of Hollister. And then January 16, 2018, the City Council actually adopted the first reading of a growth management ordinance within the City of Hollister. The ordinance needs a second reading and adoption. A little bit of background. As you know, the City of Hollister had a growth management ordinance that was approved by the voters of the City of Hollister, known as Measure U. Measure U allowed for only 244 dwelling units per year, and that was pre-2012. That measure sunsetted in 2012. As you are aware, from 2002 all the way through 2012, the City of Hollister was under a building moratorium. And the reason for that was because the Regional Water Quality Control Board essentially indicated that the City of Hollister could not make any additional connections to the City of Hollister wastewater treatment plant until the wastewater treatment plant was up to date, that it was improved. And so the City of Hollister essentially worked on the improvement of the wastewater treatment plant, and all the way through 2008. And in 2008, the State of California Regional Water Quality Control Board lifted the moratorium because the wastewater treatment plant was now in effect. It's a tertiary plant, essentially collecting the wastewater into the site, into the plant. It treats it, and then it can disperse it to ag fields for irrigation. So that was in 2008. So from 2002 through 2008, there was 0 residential dwelling units for that reason. In 2008, in December of 2008, when the moratorium was lifted, as you all recall, the City of Hollister was going through a recession. And not only the City of Hollister, but the whole state of California was going through a large recession. And so in 2009, when finally construction could occur in the City of Hollister, there was really nothing. I mean, I think for the whole year of 2009, there was only like 19 building permits for the whole year, where the growth management ordinance allowed for 244 per year. Again, 2010, there was only a handful of building permits, I think in the 30s. 2011, I think it went up a little bit because South County Housing and former Affordable Housing Agency worked on the approvals with the City of Hollister of 72 senior apartments on East Park Street and Rancho Drive. So that year bumped up to about 110 or so building permits, but still significantly lower than the 244 dwelling units per year. Where I'm getting at is that really from 2002 all the way to about 2015, the city didn't really even get close to the 244 dwelling units per year being built. The economy started getting better. And so now we have, even though they were not getting built, the tentative maps were being approved at no more than 244 dwelling units per year. So those the developers were still getting entitlements within that range of approval all the way through 2012, but they weren't building because of the recession and because of the moratorium. As you know, subdivisions have a 2-year lifespan. So eventually, if you don't build within 2 years, or if you don't get your subdivision improvement agreement within 2 years, your tentative map dies, and it has to come back before the Planning Commission. Because of the recession, because of the moratorium, the Subdivision Map Act allowed for automatic extensions. So even though the city has a 2-year approval, the state takes precedence in these cases. And so some of the language, for example, the Subdivision Map Act indicates that if the city that your tentative map is approved has a moratorium, then that within that time frame of the moratorium does not count on your approved entitlement. So it would be that time of the moratorium plus the 2 years that the city of Hollister has, and then the city has Hollister, as you well know, also has the option of extending it for 1 year. So those automatic extensions that the state provided help for these approved projects to not necessarily be considered expired. And so after the moratorium and as the economy started getting better, that's when we started seeing these developments occur. And it wasn't until 2017 where we started seeing the larger number of building permits being pulled in the city of Hollister. I think it was a little bit over 300, whereas from 2002 to 2008 it was 0, 2008, 2009, 19, 2010, 30-something. So where I'm getting at is that if we were to average the number of building permits that have been issued by the building department from 2002 through now, and including all those that have been entitled by the city of Hollister, it is not within the 244 dwelling units per year. Is less than that. And I also wanted to indicate that as part of the discussions that occur with the city council, in order for commercial establishments to also succeed, existing commercial establishments to succeed and to promote for new commercial establishments to come into a city, studies have shown that cities should be growing at a rate of about 2.5%. Not only that, but also to accommodate housing for people, in the city, and to accommodate housing, job growth, and so forth. Others can argue that it really should be at a more of a 5% or 6% growth. I was at a business council meeting not too long ago where a prominent owner of a business in town actually did some research and said that really it should be more of a 6% growth that the city should have. But city of Hollister at approximately 10,000 homes, 2.5% growth per year would bring us at about 250 units per year. So that's the recommendation that the city council basically took. The recommendation for staff was that we just wanted to make sure that if the city was going to implement the growth management ordinance, that the minimum number of units that can be approved per year should be at least the minimum numbers that HCD, our Housing and Community Development State of California, has given us as bullet point number 2 shows, 1,316 housing units to be planned for from 2015 all the way to 2023. So in an 8-year period of time, of course, the city does not have to approve them, but at least plan for them. So that brings us at an average of about 164 units per year. And with that, we have to plan as a city for households that make that are considered very low, moderate, and above moderate. So our recommendation was that if the city was considering a growth management ordinance, that it shouldn't be less than 164. So that way per year. So that way we can show the state that we are still planning for meeting those regional housing needs allocations all the way through 2023. And within those 1,316 units per year, we have to plan for very low, moderate, and above moderate. Just to give you a brief background, right now, and it may have changed recently, but and I think Commissioner Torres may be more familiar with this, but the last I checked, the average median income for a family of 4 in San Bernardino County is $81,100 per year, which that can be kind of inflated because most of the population that lives in Hollister that works commutes to San Jose, Silicon Valley, where wages are higher. But that right there, a very low income household, a family of 4, is at $24,330 per year, and so that's really challenging to essentially survive with that type of income for a family of 4. But the city of Hollister has a good relationship with affordable housing agencies to try to provide this type of housing, and with the help of the Planning Commission, try to adopt homes that would address different types of income. And as you know, we've approved some of these projects in the recent past. So with that, on the housing element, the recommendation would be and it came from the Planning Commission, from the City Council, to adopt a growth management ordinance with the number of 244 dwelling units per year, but exempt from that. And there's a list here of any type of units that are considered affordable, below market rate, low, and very low income households. Any type of secondary units would be exempt from those 244 units. Any type of apartment units would be exempt. As you know, state of California, the city of Hollister has a housing crisis in regards to rental units. And so if the Planning Commission sees that there is enough applications in for those 244 dwelling units, and then we see apartment units come in, we can still proceed with the apartment units approval or entitlements because of the high need that the city of Hollister has if this ordinance gets adopted. Also, housing designated as special needs housing, for example, per the government code, it's housing for the elderly, housing for farm workers, housing for single-parent households, housing for people with disabilities. All those get exempt from the 244 dwelling units per year. Condominiums, townhomes, and units within the Measure Y downtown area essentially is within the area considered to be in a downtown as well. All of that information is included as part of your packets that's being recommended for the City Council with your blessing, and so that's the main thing for the growth management ordinance. Next steps would be with your recommendation. We would take it to City Council for the second reading. However, the City Council does not want to make a vote on the second reading until we hear back from the State of California HCD. What we want to make sure of is that HCD is okay with the growth management ordinance, and they can still continue to certify our housing element. Our housing element from 2015 through 2023 is certified, and it's really key, especially for nonprofit organizations or when the city is trying to apply for a grant. A lot of the times, one of the first questions is, does the city of Hollister have a certified housing element? Meaning, like, is the city of Hollister planning for growth in the city? Is the city of Hollister meeting its regional housing needs allocations? And if the answer is yes, then more than likely the applicant moves forward and is a lot more susceptible to receive the grant. If the answer is no, the city of Hollister does not have a certified housing element, then it's really difficult for that agency to receive the grant. And so we want to make sure, the City Council is also very concerned that we want to make sure that the state is okay with this growth management ordinance. In our preliminary conversations with the state has indicated that because of all of the exemptions on the growth management ordinance with affordable housing, apartments, multifamily, that it appears that it should continue. The city of Hollister should continue to keep that certified housing status, but they did not want to commit and telling us in writing or giving us something in writing until some action is taken from the city. And so the hope is that if we get your blessing tonight of moving it forward to the city council, we will send this to the state and say it has now been recommended by the planning commission, and before we take it to city council, we would like to get something from you in writing that indicates that you would still continue to certify our housing element. So that's a summary of the growth management component of this general plan amendment. The second part of this is the circulation element amendment. What the city would like to do is amend the circulation element of the general plan essentially to include the Highway 25 realignment that was reviewed and approved by the Department of Transportation. As you can see, and it was also, it's on the screen, it was also part of your packet, the alignment of the Highway 25 is going to change from the existing Highway 25 and big portion of Highway 25, essentially from Route 156, Highway 156 onto San Felipe. Essentially going to be a new road that the city is going to be working on in conjunction with the county and the state of California. And it looks like it's going to be more towards the southern side of the existing Highway 25 portion, which will remain as an interior road. It would be essentially the existing road will eventually just be a frontage road, and it will cul-de-sac at the eastern end. And then at 156, it would connect with approximately the existing Highway 25, and then again it would kind of deviate a little bit from the existing Route 25. So we just want to make sure that even though it's not being contemplated for construction anytime soon, we at least want to make sure that this is part of our circulation element, and for the public to contemplate from now until it's until we see it constructed and realized. So essentially, the general plan circulation element request is for the planning commission to recommend to city council to include this Route 25 alignment into our general plan. And finally, land use element amendment is considered for the low density residential designation. The low density residential designation allows 1 to 8 dwelling units per acre. We had to put the 1 unit in because it had to start somewhere. But essentially, our zoning ordinance, as you well know, recommends a density of an average of 6 dwelling units per acre. There's a big portion of our low-density residential designation of the general plan that's within our sphere of influence. So outside of the city limits, but within our sphere of influence. As you well know, our sphere of influence is very important for us because that is where the city of Hollister is looking to grow in the future, to extend sewer, to extend water, to extend storm drain infrastructure. And so really, there is policy in our general plans, county and city, that indicate that really anything that's being proposed in the sphere of influence should be off limits to the county and should be provided to the city of Hollister for review for the possibility of an annexation or an out of jurisdiction service agreement for it to, if we can annex, then allow for the development to occur in the county, but really should connect to the city of Hollister's wastewater treatment plant as opposed to septic in our sphere of influence. Another big portion, two other main reasons for us to put the 0.75 acres as a maximum in our general plan is because, one, there is a current MOU, that's Memorandum of Understanding, that is between the City of Hollister, County of San Benito, County Water District, and later San Jose County Water District was also a part of, which basically said that there is, and it was included in your packet, an area considered to be an urban service area. Anything within that area should really be considered to be connected to the wastewater treatment plant, as opposed to having development put septic on on that area. So really, it should consider connection to the city of Hollister. And again, if it's not within the city limits, then it really should be contemplated. Annexation should be contemplated, and or out of jurisdiction. If not, if it's outside of the city limits, then at that point, the county could work with them. What we've been seeing is that some of the developers that have come to the county, especially within the sphere of influence, and have, for example, wanted to subdivide into 1 acre lots, have indicated, well, the city of Hollister's general plan has low density residential in this area, even though it's not in the city, but it's in the planning area, and it says 1 to 8 units per acres, and we want to do 1 acre lots. So we're consistent with the city of Hollister, and so that kind of puts us on a bind. Our zoning really, as mentioned, would require an average of 6 dwelling units per acre, and really the 0.75 maximum lot size would not make it compliant with the city of Hollister general plan. And so therefore, in addition, the 1 acre lots, they could potentially go to the health department for septic, and if it's at 0.75 acres, that can potentially disqualify them from septic and should encourage them to come and apply with the city of Hollister to connect to the city of Hollister wastewater treatment plant. So there's various reasons why we want to put the 0.75 acres as a maximum designation for our low density residential designation of our general plan. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the requested addendums or general plan amendments for the housing element, circulation element, and land use element. Open up public hearing for any type of questions, and consider approving a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of the general plan amendments. Are there any questions for staff?
Thank you, Abraham. Very detailed report.
You're welcome.
I do have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Wood.
I have a question regarding the residential growth limits and the narrative when it addresses the housing element period. It's stated in the narrative, if a new housing element period is established prior to the adoption of a general plan update, then the City Council shall determine the maximum number of residential units. Can you clarify what that means by housing element period? We have a certified housing element that's good until, 2023?
Right.
So
right. Thank you for that.
Maybe you can kind of clarify what that means.
Absolutely. So the housing element period is between 2015 to 2023. So it's an 8-year period that the general plan currently has.
I'm sorry. It was in 2005, right? When was it
That's
certified?
Correct.
2005.
It was 2005. However, the housing element in a general plan is the only element that the state requires that it gets updated instead of, because it was certified to 2005 all the way to 2023. But out of all the elements, the housing element is the only one that's required to be updated in intervals of 5 years. Oh. So that's why we brought it back again in 2009, all the way through 2014, and again in 2014 for it to be adopted in 2015. And in this year, that was during the recession, so the state made an exception and said, if cities already have an approved certified housing element, and this next one that they provide meets our housing needs, then instead of 5 years, it's going to be an 8-year period. So the housing element is the only element that requires that.
So it's like an update period.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then the other comment I have is I am for what you're presenting here.
Very well.
The thing that I'm kind of questioning is that it goes to state that we're looking at, and if we're considering the growth control, we have to look at certain situations with our infrastructure, our streets, and all that, services, parks and recreation facilities, et cetera, et cetera. How can that effectively be evaluated? Would that be something that might be subject to a consultant or maybe you can comment on that, because I mean, that has to be considered. Once we look at growth control, we need to consider the state of our infrastructure and how that balance is going to work. So how can our current infrastructure and facilities and amenities be evaluated to support what growth we have?
Thank you, Commissioner Huboy. There's two parts to answer that question. One of them is doing exactly what we do now. CEQA is a big component on that evaluation. So in CEQA, there's various different types of sections that are contemplated on a proposed project. Utilities, parks, pretty much covers everything. Schools is the only one that does not get reviewed, because schools have their own board that reviews any types of proposed impacts. But what we do now is we make sure that all of that is reviewed. For example, we see sewer. How many gallons of sewer can be treated per day, and based on the proposed project, how many gallons of sewer per day are anticipated, and is that going to generate an impact? Water, the same way. So we look at all that per CEQA, and then also per staff. We look at if there's roads that need to be rehabilitated, then we put as conditions of approval per your direction that prior to accepting the streets, the subdivision, we not only want to make sure that the subdivision is pristine with sidewalk, curb, and gutter and streets, but also all the way to the certain intersections of the area. So that's one way. The other way, what this growth management ordinance is going to do is essentially it's going to be a point-based system, very similar to Measure U that sunsetted in 2012. So essentially it's going to be a competition-based for the 244 units for developers to show us if all the points that are generated is 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point sections, and then the bigger 20 point sections. And essentially, these are all questions that go a little bit beyond our regular requirements of the zoning ordinance. And so, if they provide for all these things for solar, for example, energy efficient developments, additional open space requirements, then these are going to gain these developers more points. They're going to be better projects that can be approved by the Planning Commission.
So the point system is addressed after it's determined the number of units that are allowed per year.
Correct. So
and then you're answering my question is that in evaluating our current infrastructure to support the growth, it's kind of like a staff in-house CEQA process. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sometimes we do consult. We do have a list of consultants that help us with the CEQA process as well. However, the City of Hollister always would be the lead agency on that. And I know that other jurisdictions, for example, will have their CEQA consultant do the presentations of their EIRs or mitigative negative declarations. However, as you've seen, staff is always the one that presents it to you because we're the lead agency, and we can definitely allow for the consultants to do the presentations to you, but we're always on board on the types of CEQA documents that are prepared, and we provide those presentations to you along with the reports.
Now, that was also what we included in the last packet, where that had that detailed scoring mechanism, and the one that we received last report. Yeah, I remember reading how each of those developments were going to be scored, and I saw Denny hinting the master plans. I mean, they're giving certain points for them doing that as well.
You got it.
So,
you got it.
Okay, any additional comments for the staff on this item? All right, so we'll go ahead and open up for public comment period at 7:30. Do we have any speaker cards on this item, Brian?
Nothing, unless the high school students have anything to say.
Okay. We'll bring it back to the commission at 7:30. What's the pleasure of the commission on this item?
It's we haven't really talked too much about the point system. So is this something that we're going to be able to talk a little bit more about in the future, or are we just saying that we're going to go ahead and recommend to City Council. Is that it?
Well, that was the packet, again, going back to the
Packet,
packet.
and that
was
includes
very
the point system
Oh, yeah.
That
as
does.
as it's drafted.
As is drafted, Commissioner
Okay.
Uvoy, you can always, as time goes, and as if it does get implemented, as projects come in, if we see that things should be changed, maybe, that can always be recommended, and we can always take it back to council.
Just a general comment, because I'm familiar with the point system in the past.
Yeah, there are some changes.
And I
to this
think
one.
I think it's good. I read it through the point system. I think it's very comprehensive. I think it did a good job with it. It's just that I remember last time that locational factors, sometimes locational factors where the development is in relation to city services is sometimes there has been some feedback on applicants saying, well, I can't control the locational factor. I mean, why should I get penalized for it? I mean, you're going to get some of that. I mean, locational factors are a given. I mean, no matter how far good you can design a project, sometimes you can't control where the project is located. So, I mean, I'm just going to set you up that you're going to get that deliberation, because I know there are locational factors that are going to generate points. But just
Point taken. Point well taken, Commissioner Huboy. Thank you.
So,
Excuse me, Planning Manager Prado, I have a question for you. Is there a portion of the application for the growth management program that gives points for solar?
yes.
yeah.
So the question I have, isn't solar going to be a requirement
The new building
for
code.
new developments by the state? I mean, won't that be required at a certain
Yeah, I
year?
think it probably will, because it was when we went back in 2005. We came up with a lot of green building policy. Back in 2005, we didn't have the Cal Green Code. Now within the different tiers of the Cal Green Code, which is adopted by whatever local jurisdiction, how stringent what tier you're going to adopt. As it is now, it's almost, and I'm sure Gabriel can, support what I'm saying, is that it's almost regulated. Green building practices are almost regulated to the point where I can foresee this in the future. It's not required now to have everything on solar, but it's certainly it's
Yeah, we're
a
doing.
good guess.
They have to be solar ready.
Is it by 2020? Do you know?
Well, all the developments that we're doing, including the ones here in Hollister, those homes have to be solar ready.
Okay.
So
Well,
just
Or
the
master plan for solar.
orientated, the roof orientations
Okay.
and things of that nature, venting
Support
through
of
the
the roof
roofs to
structure to
support
support
the structures.
Well,
and-
the only reason I bring it up is if it becomes a requirement, that we shouldn't be giving developers points for that if it's already going to be a requirement by the state. You know what I mean? If it's not a requirement, definitely that should be an added bonus. But if the state requires all new developments to have solar, that should be something that might be stricken from that.
But
Because
it's not presently
Correct.
Right,
It's
it's not
not.
presently.
It's not a present requirement to have everything on solar. It's not presently
You're
required.
barely,
So I think
at
that's
this
fine.
point, you're
the way
barely
it is.
getting it ready for doing solar ready, and that's being, argued over now.
But I think that's a local municipal regulation, is to have projects, to be able to be a master plan for solar in the future. But it's not a requirement now with the codes that are building codes, is to have it solar ready. But by the time we get to this, it might be.
It'll be a while. It'll be a while.
Yeah, and to add to that, there is a proposed sunset here as well. The plan is, as you all know, we're also going to be working on the general plan update. The hope is to go before the council in December after the elections, because right now we started with the general plan advisory committee, and as you all know, you have two of your members are from the Planning Commission, Commissioner Huvoy and Commissioner Torres. The two members from the council, one of them was actually a council member friend, and so he's no longer with the council. He moved, and so the hope is to come back in December to see if they can, have the whoever is going to replace council member friend, either if it's going to be the new council member that's replacing the council member friend seat, or if they're going to elect somebody else, and the member of the public. So after that, staff already has proposals from consultants for the environmental impact report. So we're going to be reviewing that and also recommending that for approval. And so with that consultant chosen and the General Plan Advisory Committee, the GPAC, we should hopefully start in January or the beginning of the year. And there is a clause here that at the end of the general plan update, then the growth management ordinance sunsets. It can be that it works and it's good, and the recommendation can be that it should continue. But at this point, there is a sunset clause that it ends at the end of the general plan update, and the update, we're going to try to have an aggressive schedule of the goal is 2 years. As you know, other jurisdictions can take up 10 years or even more. But our hope is that within 2 years, we do have a very comprehensive general plan now that hasn't been implemented much. So we don't anticipate substantial changes to our current general plan. So that's another added information that we wanted to provide to you.
Just a question on the General Plan Update Committee. Have you received any applications from the general public for that one position?
I believe we do. I have to check with our city clerk, Christine, but I believe we do have some but we'll check with her and give you an update.
Because here is another example where I don't see anything in the media regarding it or anything else in Benito Link or the Freelance or San Benito Live about this position being available. So can you guys do a better outreach than what I've seen so far, unless I'm missing something? So we can
that was actually it's been a few weeks since that, or even months now, and the city clerk was the one that had that responsibility. We'll check with her and see.
Can you check with her on that? Because I haven't seen anything that people don't really know about it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Abraham. Okay, Planning Commission, what is the pleasure on this item? Entertain a motion. I'll go ahead and initiate the motion to approve General Plan Amendment 2018-1, PC Resolution 2018-50, approving the recommendation of General Plan Amendment 2018-1 to the City Council, and to amend the housing element, circulation element, and land use element of the City of Hollister 2005 to 2023.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's move down to new business.
No new business.
All right.
Chairman Torres?
Old business?
No old business.
Planning Department reports.
Just want to say we have a picture of Commissioner Lenore.
Yeah, I wanted to say that too.
Okay.
Yes, we're missing a member here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
we'll provide you with an update in regards to the appointee of Commissioner Lenore's district. Now, Councilmember Lenore, as you know, she applied for the position that was vacated by Councilmember Friend's district, and was selected to be part of that district as a council member. She was sworn in at the regular city council meeting of October 15th, and we're really happy for her. She has done a great job as a planning commission member. She's done a great job working as a city employee. I had the privilege of working with her in the city of Hollister. I know she has a further extensive background working for the county as well previously. We're going to miss her dearly at the Planning Commission, but we will continue to see her in action doing what's right, what's best for the community as a city council member now. And we just want to wish her luck and best wishes for her.
Yeah, absolutely.
I totally concur with that. Congratulations, Carol.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah. She's wonderful.
Planning Commission reports? Any additional reports? None?
I just want to have a request. I don't know if this is a report, but I mean, I just want to thank everybody for the work that you do and coming up with all these projects that we have to go over. Last month was really it was so heavy.
Yes.
I mean, in all fairness to to us and the people involved, like the projects, et cetera, other folks. I mean, I don't know why it was so overloaded, but I would appreciate if it wasn't too much, because there really isn't enough time to go over everything, and I like
Right.
to read a lot of it.
Right.
And I just would appreciate that, and also, considering that the projects have to be brought forward, but maybe we can spread them out a little bit if it's possible. Yeah.
What we
Yes.
plan on doing,
Thank you.
Commissioner Valdivia, is the planning team will be bringing forward a new planning commission application, which will kind of, I guess, spread out a lot of these projects that come before you. What we have now is a very aggressive deadline submittal, and staff is almost subservient at times to the development community, and we're here to help the development community, but we want to make sure that these projects are properly analyzed in-house before they get to you, and so I think in 2019 we'll see a little bit of a change, if I'm right,
That's
planning
correct.
manager.
That's correct. Thank you, Director Ryan. We plan on bringing at the December Planning Commission meeting, or maybe even November, but more than likely December, a schedule for you to review of essentially what we try to do is provide deadlines every month for the public to submit, and then we try to. If they are submitted on time, we schedule them for our next Development Review Committee meeting, which is for members of the internal process that we have, members of the Building Department, Engineering Department, Police, Fire, Public Works, Airport, San Bernardino Council of Governments. So we have certain deadlines that we have for us to proceed with an application process. So we'll try to get that into you either next month or by December to kind of explain to you what we do now and kind of the changes that we hope to have. So that way it can give us a little bit of time for us as well as staff to work on all of these reports that we have to respond to as well. And so we'll get that information to you within the next two Planning Commission meetings. But thank you for bringing that up. We really appreciate that.
Great job, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All right, motion is, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next meeting, Thursday, November 15th, 2018 at 6 p.m., so 1 week earlier in
Yes.
November.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
What time? What?